Snow clawed at the windshield like desperate fingers as the sleek black Bentley glided through the lonely winter streets of Chicago. Midnight had long fallen, but the city still pulsed faintly beneath the fog, a faint hum of neon and exhaust, muffled beneath the heavy curtain of snow. Inside the car, the faint scent of leather and cedar mingled with the quiet rhythm of the heater. Alexander Hale, 38, impeccably dressed, billionaire CEO of Hale Industries, barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, buried under layers of exhaustion and the hollow quiet that follows too much success. He had just closed a deal worth $500 million. The world would call it a triumph, but he didn't feel it. Not tonight. The more he gained, the more everything else felt empty. His assistant had begged him to stay the night at his penthouse downtown, but he wanted to drive, alone. The cold didn't bother him, or so he thought. As he turned down the desolate side street, the headlights caught something, a flicker of movement near the bus stop. He slowed. There, huddled on the bench beneath the street lamp, was a young woman. Her hospital scrubs were thin and soaked. Her fingers clutched around a plastic bag holding what looked like a pair of worn sneakers. Snow had gathered on her shoulders and hair, and her lips were trembling so violently she couldn't keep them closed. He could have kept driving. He almost did. For a man like him, busy, untouchable, this was not his concern. But something in her stillness, in the quiet despair of her posture, caught him. A memory flickered, his mother's hands shaking just like that, years ago when they couldn't afford heat. He slammed the brakes. "Wait here," he muttered to himself, though no one was listening. The car door swung open and the wind slapped him with a gust of biting cold. He crossed the street, shoes sinking into fresh snow. "Miss!" he called, his voice cutting through the storm. She barely stirred. He came closer, crouched beside her, and saw the faint blue tinge around her lips. Her eyes fluttered open, startled, defensive. "I'm fine," she whispered through chattering teeth, though she clearly wasn't. "You're freezing," he said firmly, slipping out of his coat. "Please, don't. I just need to wait for the bus." "It's late. There's no bus coming," he told her. "The city shut them down an hour ago. You'll freeze out here." She tried to rise, but her legs buckled. Instinct took over. He caught her, his arms wrapping around her before she could hit the ground. She was light, fragile, like a bird that had flown too far. "Let me go," she protested weakly. "I'm not leaving you here," he said, voice low but resolute. "You're coming with me." Her eyes widened at his words, and for a moment, fear flickered across her face. To her, he was a stranger, a man in a tailored coat, offering warmth that didn't seem to belong to her world. But the cold was merciless. Her body sagged against his, her strength fading with each second. He carried her to the car, ignoring the snow whipping at his face. The driver jumped out to open the door, eyes wide in confusion. "Sir, drive," Alexander ordered, his tone leaving no room for questions. The car pulled away, its taillights bleeding red into the storm. Inside, the warmth slowly returned, but the girl's shivers only worsened. Her lips murmured fragments of apology, something about missing her shift, about needing to get home. Alexander barely understood. He just wrapped his coat tighter around her, pressing a hand gently to her forehead. "Burning hot. Fever. Hospital," he said sharply. But before the driver could turn, she shook her head weakly. "No hospital," she whispered. "Please, I work there. They'll just send me home again. I'll be fine." He looked at her, really looked, at the tired eyes, the bruised shadows beneath them, the raw skin of someone who'd been fighting too hard for too long. Something inside him cracked open. "Fine," he said quietly. "Then my home it is." Her gaze lifted to his, bewildered. "What?" "No, I can't." "You don't have a choice," he said softly, but with a command that carried warmth, not threat. "You're coming with me." The car disappeared into the falling snow, leaving behind the empty bus stop, a frozen bench, a single footprint trail, and the echo of a decision that would change both of their lives forever. And as the city lights blurred past the windows, Alexander didn't yet realize that saving her life tonight would soon mean saving his own in ways he never imagined. When Emily Carter awoke, it wasn't the cold that greeted her. It was the quiet hum of a fireplace and the softness of silk sheets beneath her hands. For a moment she didn't move, afraid the illusion would shatter if she did. The faint crackle of burning wood drifted from across the room, blending with the whisper of rain against the tall glass windows. Her first thought was, I'm dreaming. Her second was, where am I? Her body ached with exhaustion. Every muscle felt heavy, but her skin, warm, finally warm, felt alive again. She pushed herself up slowly, and the room swam into focus. It was vast and elegant, unlike anything she'd ever seen outside of magazines. Ivory walls, golden sconces, a crystal chandelier glittering faintly overhead. A marble fireplace glowed with a gentle orange light. A vase of white roses sat on a mahogany nightstand beside her, fresh and fragrant. Emily's heart began to pound. This isn't a hospital. Then she remembered. The snow, the bus stop, the man in the coat. The voice that had cut through the storm. You're coming with me. She flinched at the memory, scanning the room for her bag, her shoes, anything familiar. Her scrubs had been replaced by a soft gray robe, too fine to be hers. Panic fluttered up her chest. Before she could rise, the door opened with a soft click. Alexander Hale stepped inside, carrying a tray. The scent of coffee and fresh bread filled the room. His presence seemed to fill the space effortlessly, calm, commanding, yet not imposing. He was dressed casually now, in a dark sweater and slacks, but he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone used to being obeyed. You're awake, he said gently, setting the tray on the nightstand. Good, you scared the hell out of me last night. Emily clutched the blanket closer. Who are you? She asked, her voice small but steady. He paused, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Alexander Hale. Her breath caught. She'd seen that name before, on hospital donation plaques, medical equipment, even the new pediatric wing's entrance. Hale Industries. A billionaire. A name she'd only ever read in the news, never imagined saying aloud. She stammered. I shouldn't be here. I didn't mean for you to bring me, wherever this is, my home, he said simply. And you almost froze to death outside the bus stop. I wasn't going to leave you there. I didn't ask for help, she said, though her voice trembled more from shame than defiance. I just needed to wait for the bus. I work night shifts at St. John's Hospital. I lost my apartment last week. I was just trying to... He raised a hand, his expression softening. You don't owe me an explanation, Miss Carter. Her eyes widened. You know my name? He chuckled quietly. Your ID was in your bag. Don't worry, nothing's missing. I just needed to know who you were in case you didn't wake up. Emily lowered her gaze, cheeks flushing. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Trouble? He leaned against the mantel, watching her. You didn't cause trouble. You reminded me what it looks like when someone keeps fighting even when everything's against them. Something in his tone softened her fear, if only a little. Still, her pride flickered to life. I can't stay here, she said, trying to rise. I'll go as soon as I find my shoes. You're not going anywhere, he said firmly, stepping closer. Not until you're better. You've got a fever, dehydration, exhaustion. Your body needs rest. She glared at him, though her legs betrayed her, wobbling the moment she tried to stand. He caught her again, just like he had the night before. See, he murmured. You can barely stand. Why are you doing this? She whispered. You don't even know me, he hesitated. For a moment his expression faltered, revealing something deeper, loneliness, maybe, or memory. Maybe because once someone didn't help me when I needed it most, he said quietly, and I promised myself I'd never walk past someone like that again. The honesty in his words disarmed her. She sank back onto the bed, unable to fight the warmth spreading through her chest, not just from the fire, but from him. He handed her a cup of coffee, his voice low. Drink. Then we'll talk about what comes next. What comes next? She echoed, hesitant. He smiled faintly. I have an idea. You need help. And maybe, so do I. The way he said it made her heart tighten with curiosity. She didn't understand what he meant, or what kind of help a man like him could possibly need, but something in his eyes told her the story was only beginning. As she took the first sip of coffee, warmth blooming through her veins, she didn't realize that this breakfast would be the quiet before a storm that would upend both their lives. Because just beyond that mansion's glass walls, a tabloid camera had already caught the moment a billionaire carried a nurse into his car, and by tomorrow morning, the world would be talking. The next morning began with sunlight, bright, golden, almost mocking in its cheerfulness. Emily sat by the window of the guest room, wrapped in a soft blanket, sipping tea that tasted far too expensive to belong in her hands. She'd slept better than she had in months, yet unease clawed at her stomach. The world outside felt too calm, too unreal, like a pause before an explosion. Alexander had left early, saying he had a few calls to make. His tone had been kind, almost protective, but his eyes carried something unreadable, a shadow of worry. He'd promised he'd return before lunch. Emily had nodded politely, but the moment he walked out, her mind began to race. She shouldn't be here. She didn't belong in a house with marble floors and art worth more than her annual salary. Every corner of the mansion whispered wealth and control. She was a visitor in a world she could never afford to dream about. When she found her phone, plugged in, fully charged, placed neatly on the bedside table, she sighed with relief. Finally, a piece of normalcy. But as the screen lit up, her heart plummeted to missed calls. 112 unread messages. Her hands trembled as she opened the first text from her co-worker, Jenna. "Emily, what the hell is going on?" "You're all over the news." Another message blinked in from her supervisor. "We need to talk. The hospital board saw the pictures." Pictures? She scrolled to the news alerts, her breath catching as she read the headlines. Billionaire CEO Alexander Hale spotted carrying unknown woman into his car in the middle of the night. Mystery woman in scrubs, a secret affair or a hidden rescue. Nurse found at bus stop taken home by Hale. Sources say she spent the night. Her vision blurred. She clicked one of the articles, and there it was, the photo. A grainy, zoomed-in shot of Alexander holding her in his arms. Her head resting against his chest, eyes closed, snow falling around them. It looked intimate, scandalous. Not like a rescue, but like a secret romance. The headline made it worse. Hale's Midnight Angel. Inside the CEO's mysterious encounter. Emily's stomach turned. The comments below were cruel, strangers dissecting her life, her face, her clothes. Some called her lucky. Most called her worse. Gold digger. She knew what she was doing. Probably faked the whole thing to get attention. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering onto the floor. Tears stung her eyes as she pressed her palms to her face. She had done nothing wrong. All she'd wanted was to survive the night, and now, the entire world thought she was some manipulative opportunist. The door creaked softly behind her. Alexander stood there, silent for a moment, his jaw tight. He'd seen it too. "I'm sorry," he said finally. His voice, normally so calm, held an edge of anger, not at her, but at the world. "I didn't expect it to get out this fast." Emily turned toward him, trembling. "They're saying I slept with you, that I planned it." "I could lose my job." "I know," he said quietly, stepping closer. "My PR team is already working on a statement. They'll clear it up. Clear it up." She laughed bitterly. "Do you really think people care about the truth when a lie makes a better headline?" He flinched at the truth in her words. "Then let me protect you," he said firmly. "Stay here until it blows over. I can't hide here." She snapped, anger flaring through her fear. "I worked for years to become a nurse. I clean up blood. I take care of dying people. I don't need your pity or your mansion." "It's not pity," he said, voice softening. "It's responsibility. You're in this mess because of me." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Emily looked at him at the sincerity in his eyes, and for the first time saw not the billionaire everyone worshipped, but a man who looked tired, vulnerable. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I can't undo what's been done, but I can stand beside you." "I will." Her anger faltered. "Why? Why go this far for someone you met one night?" He looked at her and his voice dropped to a whisper. "Because sometimes one night changes everything." The words hung in the air like a confession. But before Emily could respond, a phone buzzed sharply on the nightstand. Alexander checked it and his expression hardened. "What?" she asked, alarmed. He looked up at her, eyes dark with concern. "It's worse than I thought," he said quietly. "They've found your old address. Reporters are outside your hospital. Someone leaked your file." Her heart stopped. "What do I do now?" He didn't hesitate. "You stay here. I'll handle this." But as he turned to leave, Emily's voice cracked behind him. "You can't fix this for me, Mr. Hale. People like you don't get destroyed by rumors." "People like me do," he froze in the doorway, guilt flickering in his eyes, and as the sound of paparazzi cameras began echoing faintly from the gates outside, Emily realized the life she'd fought so hard to hold together was already slipping away. The storm outside had turned to rain, steady, relentless. the kind that soaked through walls and patience alike. Emily sat curled on the edge of the sofa in Alexander's library, watching droplets trace slow paths down the window. The world beyond those glass panes was spinning out of control, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The first call from the hospital came mid-morning. Her supervisor's tone was clipped, professional, and cold. "Emily, the board has decided to suspend you pending investigation. The photos have damaged the hospital's reputation. Until further notice, you're not to return," Emily had begged. She tried to explain what happened, that she was just trying to get home, that she hadn't done anything wrong. But the voice on the other end had already moved on, polite in the way people are when they're done caring. When the call ended, she just sat there, phone in hand, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and despair. Across the room, Alexander watched her silently. He had canceled all his meetings for the day, which for a man like him was no small thing. He stood by the fireplace, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other nursing a cup of untouched coffee. He looked composed, but beneath that calm surface there was something darker brewing, anger. Not at her, but at the machine that devoured anyone who dared to fall out of line. "Say something," Emily whispered at last, her voice barely audible. "I already have my legal team on it," he said quietly. "We'll clear your name." She shook her head. "You don't get it. Once a story like that gets out, it doesn't go away. People believe what they want to believe. The truth doesn't matter anymore." He took a step closer. "Then we'll make them believe it. We'll tell them what really happened." Emily let out a short, bitter laugh. "You think anyone's going to believe the billionaire and the broke nurse didn't have something going on? Come on, that's the kind of story people want to be true. I'm not a headline you can edit, Alexander." Her voice cracked on his name. It was the first time she'd said it aloud, soft, human, almost intimate. He hesitated, then spoke more gently. "Emily, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But I won't walk away and leave you to clean up the mess I made. Let me help you." She looked at him through tears she didn't bother to hide. "Why? You could just issue a statement, make yourself look noble, and forget I ever existed." Something flickered across his face then. Pain, deep and old. "Because I've already done that once," he said quietly. "And I swore I'd never do it again." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" He sat across from her, his voice low, almost reverent. "When I was 23, my mother got sick. We couldn't afford her treatments. I was just starting my company, every dollar mattered. She begged me not to stop working, not to worry about her. So I didn't. I pushed forward, made the deal, went to the meetings, and I wasn't there when she died." The room fell silent. The rain filled the space between them. "She used to be a nurse too," he added softly. Said helping people was the only thing that made her feel alive. "When I saw you at that bus stop, freezing, exhausted, it felt like seeing her all over again. Someone strong who deserved a break and never got one." Emily swallowed hard, her anger softening into something more fragile. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "Don't be," he replied. "Just don't tell me to walk away." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain and the slow crackle of the fire, but before the quiet could settle into peace, the front gates erupted with the sound of shouting. Voices, cameras. Emily shot up, panic flaring in her chest. "They found us?" Alexander's jaw tightened. He strode to the window, peering through the rain. "They're at the gate." Damn it! Within seconds, his security team was on alert, but the noise outside grew louder. Reporters calling her name, shoving microphones between the iron bars, shouting accusations. The headlines had turned into a feeding frenzy, and she was the prey. Alexander turned back to her. "Pack your things. I'm taking you somewhere safe." "I can't keep running," she said weakly. "Where does it end?" "When the truth comes out," he said. She shook her head. "Truth doesn't sell, Alexander. Lies do." He stepped closer, eyes burning with quiet determination. "Then we'll give them something better than lies. We'll show them who you really are." Her lips parted to argue, but his conviction, his absolute certainty, made her hesitate. For a fleeting second, she believed him. Believed that maybe somehow the chaos could be tamed. "Please," he said softly, almost pleading now. "Just trust me." Emily nodded, her heart warring between fear and something dangerously close to faith. She turned toward the staircase to grab her things, but paused halfway, glancing back at him. "What if this ruins you too?" she asked. He smiled faintly, almost sad. "Maybe it's time something real did." Before she could respond, a crash of thunder split the sky, shaking the windows. Outside, the reporters surged closer, flashes of light like lightning in the storm. And as Alexander's men moved to secure the gates, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was no longer just about a misunderstanding. Something bigger was unfolding, something neither of them were ready for. The following morning arrived heavy with fog. The mansion, once a fortress of calm, now felt like a cage. Reporters still crowded outside the gates, their voices muffled through the mist, their cameras waiting for the next glimpse of scandal. Inside, the silence between Emily and Alexander had grown thick, filled with unspoken questions. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the flashes, the cameras, the headlines, the whispers of strangers twisting her life into a story she didn't recognize. She wanted to believe Alexander's promises that things would settle, that truth would surface, but deep inside, doubt gnawed at her. That morning, she wandered through the mansion's east wing, a place she hadn't yet explored. The air was still, tinged with the faint scent of polish and paper. She opened a door and stepped into what looked like a private study. The walls were lined with shelves of old books, family portraits, and photographs, black and white memories of a life lived long before she'd ever met him. Her eyes landed on one picture near the center of the room, a young nurse smiling beside a hospital bed. Her uniform was old-fashioned, crisp white with a red cross pinned near the heart. But what caught Emily's breath was the name on the badge, M. Hale. It was Alexander's mother. In the photo, she looked radiant, compassion in her eyes, warmth in her smile. But beside her, in a smaller frame, was another picture, a grainy hospital staff photo. And there, among the faces, Emily saw something that made her blood run cold, her own mother. She froze. There was no mistaking it, same eyes, same tired but gentle smile. Her mother had worked at St. John's for years before she passed. Emily reached out, trembling, tracing her mother's image with her fingertips. What was she doing in a photo with his mother? Before she could think, the sound of a door behind her made her flinch. Alexander stood in the doorway, watching her. His expression shifted from surprise to something else. Resignation. "You found it," he said softly. Emily turned to him, confusion and shock warring on her face. "Why is my mother in your family's photo?" He took a slow breath, stepping closer. "I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. Tell me what." "Our mothers knew each other," he said quietly. "They were close. Very close." Emily shook her head. "That's impossible." "My mom never mentioned anyone named Hale." "She wouldn't have," he said. "Not after what happened." Emily's stomach twisted. "What happened?" Alexander hesitated, running a hand through his hair as though trying to steady his thoughts. 20 years ago, my mother was a nurse at the same hospital as yours. They both worked the night shift. One night there was a fire in the pediatric wing. A power outage caused the oxygen tanks to ignite. My mother was trapped inside with 3 patients. His voice trembled slightly, the memory still raw. "Your mother was the one who ran back in to help her. Everyone else had already evacuated. They both made it out alive. But one of the children didn't." Emily's eyes widened. "I remember that fire," she whispered. "Mom used to wake up screaming some nights. She said she couldn't save them all." Alexander nodded. "My mother never forgave herself. She blamed herself for that child's death. She said your mother was the bravest person she ever met. Before she died, she told me, if I ever met anyone like her, anyone who reminded me of that kind of strength, I should never turn away." Emily's throat tightened. "So when you saw me at the bus stop?" "I didn't see a stranger," he said softly. "I saw my mother's promise. I saw the woman who once saved her life." The weight of his words hit her like a wave. Everything. The way he'd looked at her. The urgency in his voice. His insistence on helping. It all made sense now. Tears filled her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "Because I didn't want you to think it was charity," he said, voice breaking. "I didn't help you out of guilt, Emily. I helped you because I saw you. The same fire, the same strength. You didn't just remind me of her. You made me remember what compassion feels like." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was reverent. The kind of stillness that comes when 2 broken pasts suddenly recognize each other. Emily turned back to the photo, her mother's smile now carrying new meaning. She would have liked that, she whispered, knowing her kindness lived on through someone else. She'd be proud of you, Alexander said gently. She'd tell you not to give up. Emily smiled weakly through her tears. That sounds like her. But the fragile peace between them shattered when Alexander's phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He frowned, answering quickly. Yes? His expression shifted in an instant from calm to fury. What? No, that's not true. Emily stepped closer. What is it? He ended the call, jaw tight. Someone leaked a story claiming you blackmailed me for money. They're saying I paid you off to stay quiet. Emily's face went pale. But that's a lie. I haven't even left this house. I know, he said, eyes burning with determination. But the media doesn't care about the truth, which means we can't keep hiding anymore. She stared at him, heart racing. What do you mean? He took her hand, his grip steady. If they want a story, we'll give them one, the real one, together. The sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like a victim of the headlines. She felt like someone standing beside a man willing to risk everything for the truth. But as the sound of another round of camera flashes erupted outside, she realized something. The world wasn't ready to hear the truth yet, and fighting it would cost them both more than they could imagine. The storm outside had calmed, but inside Alexander Hale's world, everything was collapsing. By Monday morning, the headlines had grown crueler, the lies sharper. Hale's mistress scandal expands. Company board demands answers. Nurse turns gold digger. Alleged payoff shakes Hale Industries. Every network, every site, every gossip blog had latched onto the story like sharks to blood. Even his investors were beginning to flinch. Alexander sat at the long oak table in his private office, the one overlooking the city skyline. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from lawyers, board members, publicists, all demanding explanations, denials, or distance. The empire he had spent 2 decades building was shaking under his feet, all because of one moment of decency that had been twisted into sin. Emily watched him from across the room, her heart aching at the sight. The man who had carried her through a snowstorm now looked like someone carrying the weight of the world. His usually perfect composure was cracking, subtle but visible in the tightness of his jaw, the weariness in his eyes. They're going to fire you, aren't they? She said softly. He looked up from the papers, forcing a small, humorless smile. You can't fire a CEO who owns the company, but they can vote to strip me of control. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He leaned back, exhaling. Don't apologize, Emily. This isn't your fault. It's mine. I thought I could control the story, but I underestimated how much people love a fall from grace. Her hands clenched at her sides. Then let me go public. Let me tell them everything. That you saved me. That nothing happened between us. Maybe if they hear it from me, he shook his head sharply. No, you'll just get dragged deeper into it. They'll rip you apart. You've seen what they already did to your name. She crossed the room, her voice trembling. And what about you? They're destroying everything you've built. You can't keep protecting me at the cost of your life. He stood then, suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. My life? He said, voice tight with anger and something deeper, fear. Emily, my life stopped belonging to me years ago. Every headline, every decision, every mistake, none of it's mine anymore. It's all theirs. The shareholders, the press, the public. I thought money could buy freedom, but it just bought a bigger cage. Emily stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't have to let them control this. We can fight back. He looked at her, really looked, her eyes filled with stubborn courage, her posture small but unyielding. And in that moment, something shifted in him. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a letter, creased, yellowed, fragile. My mother wrote this before she died, he said quietly. I used to read it whenever I forgot why I started any of this. You should read it. Emily took it gently, her fingers brushing his. The paper trembled slightly in her hands as she unfolded it. The handwriting was soft, feminine, looping with care. My dear Alex, the world will tell you that strength is power and power is control. But real strength is kindness, even when it costs you. Never let your success make you blind to those who need your hand. One day, you'll meet someone who reminds you why you were given everything, to protect, not to own. Don't run from that. Love is the only thing worth losing for. Emily blinked back tears as she folded the letter again. She was talking about you, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Or maybe about you. The words lingered between them, fragile and unspoken. The tension that had built over days, fear, gratitude, confusion, shifted into something deeper, something tender and real. But the moment shattered when Alexander's phone rang again. He almost ignored it, but the name flashing on the screen, David Langford, chairman of the board, made his blood run cold. He answered, voice clipped. "David, Alex," came the reply, low and cold. "We're holding an emergency meeting tonight. The board wants you to step down temporarily until the investigation clears." "That's absurd," Alexander snapped. "You know I've done nothing wrong." "Perception is what matters, Alex. Sponsors are pulling out, investors are panicking. The company needs a clean image, and right now, you're not it." He didn't respond. His silence said enough. When the call ended, he set the phone down gently, as if afraid to break it. "They're removing me," he said quietly.
"Effective immediately." Emily felt her chest tighten.
"No, you can't just let them—" "I don't have a choice," he interrupted, his voice calm but hollow. "I built a world where image means more than truth, and now it's turning on me." She wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. He turned toward her, his expression softer now. "You should leave this place, Emily, before it drags you down too." She stepped closer, shaking her head. "You don't get to decide that for me." He blinked, surprised. "You found me when I was invisible," she said, tears glinting in her eyes. "You gave me warmth when the world didn't care if I froze. You don't think I'll stand by you when you're the one getting cold." He laughed softly, broken, disbelieving. "You have no idea what this could cost you." "Neither did you," she whispered. For the first time, Alexander looked like he might break. His facade, the armor of the billionaire. The calm of the CEO, cracked, revealing the man beneath, human, lost, grateful he wanted to speak. To tell her that she was wrong to stay, but the truth burned in his throat. Because deep down he didn't want her to leave. Outside, lightning flashed again, another storm rolling in, and as thunder rumbled across the city, Emily turned toward the window, watching the dark clouds gather. "Let it come," she said quietly. "Maybe storms wash away the lies." Behind her, Alexander closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he let himself hope that she was right. The boardroom was colder than the night Alexander found Emily. Rows of men in dark suits sat under a chandelier's sterile light, their expressions blank and rehearsed. Cameras were banned, but whispers filled the air like static. The media outside could smell blood, waiting for the fall of a giant. At the center of the long mahogany table sat Alexander Hale, hands folded, eyes hollow but steady. Across from him sat David Langford, his oldest friend turned accuser. Between them, silence, thick as fog. "Mr. Hale," Langford began, voice smooth as a knife, "we appreciate your presence here today. The board has unanimously agreed that your recent involvement in a personal scandal has damaged the company's reputation. Until this matter is resolved, we are asking you to step down as CEO, effective immediately." Alexander didn't flinch. "You mean you're asking me to surrender everything I've built because of lies?" Langford smiled tightly. "Not lies, perceptions. The public doesn't care about the truth. They care about what sells. And right now your story sells headlines, not hope." A quiet murmur rippled through the room. Alexander leaned forward, his tone icy calm. "And when those headlines fade, what then? When you've traded loyalty for comfort, what will be left of this company?" Langford's expression didn't change. "Survival, Alex. Something you taught us all too well. The vote was quick, impersonal, final. 12 hands raised against him. Only one, the intern recording minutes, hesitated before following the others. It was done. The Empire had spoken. Alexander stood slowly, buttoning his coat, his face unreadable. "Then I wish you luck keeping what's left." As he turned to leave, the door opened. Gasps filled the room. Emily stood there, pale but fierce, holding a folder in trembling hands. "Wait," she said. "You can't do this," Langford frowned. "Miss Brooks, this is a private—" "No," she interrupted, her voice clear. "It stopped being private when you leaked my name to the press. You wanted a story? Then let's tell it right." She stepped forward, slamming the folder onto the table. Inside were printed screenshots, messages, financial logs, proof that the so-called scandal was manufactured. "This," she said, pointing at one document, is a payment record showing that one of your PR firms fabricated fake accounts to spread rumors about me. They were paid through an offshore company, owned by him. She glared straight at Langford. The room erupted. Several board members turned, whispering furiously. Langford's mask cracked. "You can't prove that's authentic," he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Oh, I can," Emily shot back. "Because your assistant sent me the originals this morning. She was tired of watching you destroy people for profit." Langford's eyes darted around, searching for an ally. There were none. Alexander stood frozen, watching Emily with awe and disbelief. The woman he had once carried through the snow was now carrying him. Langford tried to recover. "Even if this is true, Miss Brooks, it doesn't excuse your relationship with Mr. Hale. The optics, there was no relationship," Emily shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "He saved my life. I was freezing to death at a bus stop, and he took me home. That's it. The only reason I'm standing here is because he cared when no one else did." The silence that followed was heavy, raw. Then one of the senior members cleared his throat. "Is this true, Alex?" Alexander nodded slowly. "Every word. And you didn't pay her off? No personal involvement?" He looked at Emily, his gaze soft but unwavering. "The only thing I ever gave her was a place to get warm. And maybe," he paused, voice lowering, "a reason to believe in kindness again." Something broke in the room. The armor of cynicism that had held these men together began to crack. A few looked down, ashamed. Langford, cornered, lashed out. "You think anyone will believe this little act? The damage is done. You're finished." Alexander smiled faintly. "Then let me be finished. I've been building walls around myself for so long I forgot what they were keeping out." He turned to the board. "Effective immediately, I resign. Not because I'm guilty, but because I refuse to be part of a world that punishes decency. But before I go, I'll make sure the truth comes out." He pulled out a flash drive and placed it on the table. "Everything you've done, David, every falsified account, every manipulated report, it's all here. By tomorrow morning, it'll be public." Langford went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "I just did." Then Alexander took Emily's hand. The two of them walked out together, past the rows of stunned faces, through the lobby where cameras waited, into the storm that raged outside. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing like lightning. "Mr. Hale, are the rumors true? Miss Brooks, are you his mistress? Are you in love with him?" Alexander paused on the marble steps, the wind whipping his coat, and looked straight into the nearest camera. "The truth," he said, voice firm but calm, "is that kindness isn't weakness. The truth is that helping someone shouldn't ruin your life. And if that's what this world believes, then maybe it's not me who needs to change." The crowd went silent. Cameras clicked. The storm broke. Hours later, in the quiet of his penthouse, Alexander stood by the window, watching dawn paint the city gold. He had lost everything that defined him, but for the first time he felt free. Emily joined him, a cup of tea in her hands. "You really did it," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "We did. They'll come after you for this," she said softly. He nodded. "Maybe. But the truth doesn't need protection. It just needs time." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun rise through the rain. Then Emily said, almost shyly, "So, what happens now?" He turned to her, eyes warm. "Now?" He took her hand again, gently this time. "Now we start over, not as CEO and nurse, just as two people who didn't give up when they could have." She smiled through tears. "Together?" He nodded. "You're coming with me." Outside, the world was already moving on. New headlines, new storms. But for them, standing in the golden light of morning, none of that mattered anymore. Because sometimes, a single act of kindness doesn't just save a life, it rebuilds one.